Hey there, Nichole Huntsman here. Thanks for joining me on the Modern Cosmic Astrology channel for this 2019 forecast. I'm really excited to be able to help shed some light on this year for you, 2019. The theme I've given this year is Fortune Favors the Prepared Mind. And this is a year where we have a combination of planets that are in their natural sign, which gives them this extra purity, kind of this potency. And even the nodes of the moon and our eclipses this year are sort of, we've got them in the Cancer is being underscored. So this has to do with moon rules Cancer. This year to me feels like one of truth. Are you living a life that is your personal truth? Are you living a life that you have been taught should be your personal truth, right? There are going to be some themes this year as well, people feeling really excited, like as though their dreams have come true, and sort of feeling like finally, okay, let's do this. Like finally, I can see the opportunity. I can see the sort of the horizon, and things look beautiful over there. So I'm headed that way, which is wonderful. But we're also going to kind of halfway through the year have some themes of, wait a second, I thought we were on the same page, but now I kind of feel like we might not be on the same page. A little bit of adjustments. Okay, so get a pencil, get something to write on, what have you, to take notes, because I will be giving dates, months, and that sort of thing. I like to think in windows of time, okay? And first of all, what we'll be looking at is, I'm going to break things up in this first part of the video, 3 sections. And this is going to be a bit of a primer for those of you who are unfamiliar with astrology, if you're new to it, okay? So the first section will have to do with just the transits of the planets from Jupiter out to Pluto. So that's Jupiter, planet of expansion, Saturn, planet of restriction, Uranus, planet of sort of disruption, Neptune, planet of dissolution, and then Pluto, planet of transformation through death and rebirth. And these are big, slow cycles, other than Jupiter, not Jupiter and Saturn so much, but as you start moving from Uranus on out, they're slower cycles, and they're ones we're all experiencing together. And generationally, we're experiencing them. We're born into generations that kind of overlap these cycles. So they affect us a little bit differently. And then at the end of the video, we'll be moving, after transits, we'll look at the eclipses, which are in sort of the Capricorn, Cancer, Capricorn axis for the most part. And then we'll finally take a look at the Mercury retrogrades that we have this year, which are in water signs. So it just adds a further element that's subjective and personal, and like, how am I understanding the world around me and this situation, and you know, makes the year one where I think clarification, and at the end of the year feeling like, okay, I tried that thing and it went this way, you know, and now I'm going to sort of clarify my vision for 2020. I feel like 2020 is going to be a very big year of people taking the things that they're learning this year, clarifying on or working on or jumping into this year, and the success is being seen in 2020. That's what I'm picturing. So the second part of this video is when we'll go over how these collective sort of changes in our cosmic cycles of time will affect your sun sign in particular. And we'll be using the natural, place your sun sign in the first house. Okay, that's kind of how I do this, and I'll explain that later. And then other than that, we'll just, hopefully this will be helpful for you. If you would like a more personal forecast, that would become the next level, which is much more specific, where I take your birth chart and we look at everything as it applies to your personal birth chart. So that's, you know, a personal forecast from astrology. Okay. We're going to move on and take a look at the planets now. So let's look at how the planetary movements and cycles, the signs they're in and whatnot. To get a feel in general, you have to kind of know a planet, a transiting planet by itself before you look at it relative to anything else. This is like with anything in astrology, okay? So first of all, let's take a look at Jupiter. Jupiter's in Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is a sign that's ruled by Jupiter. So it's as though Jupiter is in his element, okay? I'm thinking it's like bigger, faster, stronger, better, bolder, more courageous. It's just, it has this, Jupiter has this quality of abundance, you know, that comes with him. But Jupiter also gives us many times confidence in times when maybe we didn't have confidence or belief in ourself or in our vision, and which is wonderful. It's how many things get off the ground. There's an optimism, a buoyancy, a positivity to Jupiter. But on the shadow side, think of Jupiter, and I mentioned this a little bit, think of Jupiter as a teacher that teaches you through giving you belief in a vision, in a truth, so to speak. And this could be anything from, I'm going to start this new business. Ooh, I'm going to move into this neighborhood. Ooh, I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to marry this person. Whatever. It's like or I'm going to join this church. It's anything where you feel like an aha moment of, yes, this is true, this is real, this is right. And you feel this fresh sense of almost like vitality, right? So Jupiter in Sag has this grandiose, yes, you can do it. He wants to coach you and say, you got this, okay? And what ends up happening, though, is you'll try something many times that you haven't ever tried before. You're trying it on faith, on belief that this is let's say, this is the person I've always dreamt of, and you meet this person, but let's say you just met them. You're going to project onto them or on the relationship all of your dreams and fantasies about what this is supposed to be, which it might end up being. Might not, though. So you go through that experience from a place of naivete. That's Jupiter. Jupiter experiences are always where he shows you where you're naive and sort of hopeful without knowing why or having a reason to be that way. As you have an experience, and then after he says, okay, now what did you think about that? And usually you feel wiser in some way. You feel like, well, that was an awesome experience, but there were times where, man, was I learning a lot, or was humbled by that experience, right? So anybody, Sagittarius is like Jupiter's halfway through Sag right now. So anyone who's like 11 degrees into the end of Sagittarius, as well as people the very beginning of Capricorn, 0 through 6 of Capricorn, that's where Jupiter will be this year. If you have any planets or points at 11 to 29 degrees, like in general, or 0 to 6 degrees in any sign, those will be receiving some type of aspect from Jupiter. So you can expect those areas of your life to, in some way, you might be excited about this part of your life and you may want to grow it in some way, but you may also be really believing a vision that you've never experienced before. You've never tested it or tried it, okay? So what's cool, though, and exciting, and this is like when a kid, you think of someone who's young, who's never had their heart broken or never like lost their fortune or whatever. They're excited because they believe in themselves because they've never done it before. They've never been hurt, so they don't know any better. And that's why I always think it's funny when young people are like giving advice on YouTube that are like 20, and I'm like, you haven't even had your Saturn return yet. So I mean, it's wonderful, it's great, but I just think that's a long road ahead of you, because when you think you know everything and then you really have to experience life, it can be very disheartening. So that's the kind of stuff we'll be running into this year. So I'd say be excited about the vision that you have and the dream that you have that you're trying to promote this year, but be aware that at the same time, we have a lovely square from Neptune, and we'll get to that in a moment. In the meanwhile, bear in mind that this summer, basically it's kind of from like May at the, well, I guess June at the latest because of Neptune. It's like all the planets that are outer are retrograde except Uranus. So they're bringing lessons at an accelerated pace this year. Like you're going to learn things really quickly this year, I think. You're going to make mistakes quickly and need to learn really quickly from those mistakes. So, okay, when we move on to Saturn. Saturn is it's in Capricorn right now, so he's in his sign as well. So he's very strong, pure Capricorn energy, which has to do with the rules and the structure and the order. And Capricorn shows us through forcing us to put in the work, to have to sacrifice in some way, he's tied to getting older. He's tied to feeling tired because you've been busting your butt all day. He's heavy. There's burdens with Saturn. It's the recognition that here in this dimension, these 3 dimensions here on Earth, that there are things like sickness, death, that there's an end to your life, that your days are numbered, etc. So be cautious with your days. He is the part of you that's going to be, the glass is either half empty or it's just it's like half empty, and it's very pragmatic. He's kind of like, well, the glass is what it is. It's got half, it's halfway full with water and halfway full of air. That's kind of more the Capricorn mentality, or that it's half empty. Tends to focus more on, in the past, maybe I was Jupiterian, I was believing in this thing, and then I got my truth crushed. my dream crushed, and now I'm a little more careful and cautious. So that's the shadow side of Saturn. The high side and the wonderful, important side of Saturn is structure, order, rules. Like, there's a reason you should have boundaries in your life. There's a reason you should, as I've titled this, measure twice, cut once. That's the theme. Measure twice, cut once. Sagittarius, or Jupiter in Sagittarius this year, is going to make you feel like, go, go, go. I want to do all the things. I want to have all of it. I want to, just the big vision. And I got this. And in fact, listening to me, you're probably going, oh, no, that's not true. Because you're going to be thinking right now about Aries in your life. Just look and see where Sagittarius is at in your chart. And you're going to be like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So just wait and see. Now, so Saturn is at 11 to 21 degrees this year of Capricorn. So if you've got anything in those degrees, Saturn will be sitting on, some sort of an aspect to that planet or point. We do have a retrograde from April to September. So that kind of goes from 20 degrees and goes all the way back to 13. So it's kind of hanging out in the middle. If you have anything in the middle of cardinal signs too, you'll be receiving, I feel like it'll probably affect those of us the most. And because those of us with cardinal signs have experienced since 2008, the Pluto, Uranus, to some extent, square, it's as though this is kind of the final maturing, the final step in did you learn what you needed to learn? With all that Uranian energy, a lot of us were kind of wild and crazy and had lived lives that were very different from how we had lived before. And it's kind of like, now it's time to clean up the mess. So Capricorn, that's what he does. He helps you make a plan, all right? We talk about then Uranus. Uranus is the most exciting, I suppose, change this year. And moving into the sign of Taurus, this will happen in May. And I think in May 11th or so. Currently, Uranus is at the end of Aries. So if you've got any cardinal sign at the end of, from probably 27 degrees, 29 degrees, around there, and you could even go even a little bit earlier, you've received, just as Uranus moved back into Aries at the end of this year, kind of was playing around again with those planets. And so if you suddenly got a little wild hair this year, or had something happen that you wouldn't have expected, that was because Uranus came back just to say bye-bye to Aries. Now Uranus is moving into Taurus. I'm calling this one the masses take back control. You can also call it, I was calling it before, slowly coming online. Okay, there's a process with Taurus. Taurus is about keeping things the same, earthy, solid, right? So Uranus, our planet that represents disruption and evolution as a collective. He was in Aries. That was the internet. Aries is the pioneer. Technology is Uranus. Innovation is Uranus. Put those two together, you got the internet. And it was just like a wildfire. All these different apps being invented and websites and blah, 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 blah. And YouTubes, ways to get information that were new. As we move into Taurus, there will be a bit of maybe a slowing down and a sort of a getting rid of and simplifying, getting rid of the businesses that are just superfluous tech businesses, big themes that have to do with cryptocurrency. And I think this year there's going to be some people who are get themselves a little bit too excited. So just being careful in that area with where you're willing to gamble. And also, for those people who are Tauruses, be careful with accidents. I had so many Taurus friends and just people that I knew that had broke bones last year or lost a tooth or, et cetera, et cetera. So be careful. For some reason, it was like on the left side of the body too. So that's something I need to kind of look into. But anyway, be cautious, because Taurus is this sign that has to do with being, I'm like in my environment, Taurians, they tend to like music and food and like the pleasures of the body, because it's an area, or they're like artists, it's an area that they're comfortable with. They're comfortable in their world. Well, Uranus comes along and he's like shifting their world. They're learning about their space and how they have control over it. So I think a lot of Taurians will be having a little bit of some wild hairs, but it's Taurus style, so it's a bit it's like mellow, and then getting excited about something. But okay, we'll talk about Taurus later in the Taurus video. We are in the sign, once we get into Taurus, this is in May, that's when we'll be having like all the planets that are outer planets pretty much retrograde. So it's like the only planet that is moving direct. It just makes me think, I'm like imagining all the planets, they're sort of, they've wandered off. I don't know, they've like wandered off, and Uranus is there still. It's like, oh, hey, how's it going? So he walks into a party, and he's Uranus and Taurus too. So he kind of makes me think of this guy that's kind of like he's like a hippie, but he's like a dirty hippie kind of, but he's also probably pretty cute, I love Tauruses, so that's just my own like bias. But you can just see him being like, hey, wait, where did everybody go? What happened? What's up with the party? And anyway, he will be very present, and he'll be like knocking stuff over and, I don't know, causing problems this year, but like, oh crap, I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. Technology is a big area where we're going to see data breaches this year like crazy. Be really careful with your security. Financial security is important. I mean, not to be a Luddite, but I feel like a lot of people, as Uranus moves through Taurus, will feel a little bit distrustful of anything that has to do with their information being on the internet. So we'll also see people who are willing to barter or make money off of their information. That's going to be big, I think, in this next 7 years. Information is king. So data that you have possession of, not just other people's data, but I also feel like when companies use your information for their marketing or whatever, it's like I think people would be demanding some kind of a percentage of whatever monies are being exchanged. So just quote me on that one. The other thing just happened, and I said this the week before it happened. I said, because I take Lyft, I love Lyft, and I said to a friend, they're going to start a subscription service guaranteed for those of us who don't want to own a car, but also, it's expensive to use Lyft, and so sure enough, the next week they did. And so that's a kind of a combination. It's Uranian in a sense, but it's technology, and it has to do with our money, simplifying it, and the subscription, that to me feels very sort of Uranus and Taurus. So I think we'll see lots of subscriptions and things like that this year pop up, or not just this year, but in general. So I don't want to make this into a Uranus video. Just bear in mind that there will be upsets and shocks and disruptions in the area of technology and, disruptive inventions and technologies that come onto the scene that are wonderful. The masses, anything that helps group funding, where I can invest a little bit of money in something, right? Almost like a mutual fund. We're going to be seeing a lot, but it'll be mortgages, it'll be car loans. Cars, by the way, are going to become less and less necessary. You're going to see, I believe, far fewer people owning vehicles. I think that's going to be a huge, before we would move into 2000 and I just think before we've got Uranus and Gemini, you'll see people getting rid of possessions, simplifying their lives, spending their money on what they value, what matters to them, and not so much on stuff that you don't need. Okay, moving into Neptune. So Neptune is in Pisces and has been in Pisces since 2011, and this is the rabbit hole. I mean, wherever Neptune is at in your birth chart, that's the area of your life where it's almost like you're asleep and you're in a dream. And by that, I mean, it's, when you're having a dream and sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, that's sort of the feel of Neptune. And Neptune is here to make you feel like you don't know what is going on. so that you're open to either divine inspiration, you're open to seeing things from another person's vantage point, you're open to, you're having it's moving from a place of no ego. So whatever that looks like for you, okay? And it will be there, Neptune's going to be there until I think 2025, and then we'll move into Aries. That's going to be like a whole new exciting phase of global, I'm worried about war. But anyway, we'll talk about that at a different time. Now, Pluto finally is in Capricorn. And I'm calling this not your father's Oldsmobile or not your daddy's Cadillac. Those of us who are born like X generation or people who have Pluto and Libra, our generation has dealt with the fallout from feminism, the negative side, which has been the sort of, men have been, I think, emasculated in a lot of ways. And I think women have been forced into this paradigm where it's like you have to be a career woman. You have to it's just as bad as how things were before. It's like you're still being dictated to. So I think there's a pendulum swing. A lot of men who are my age, I know a lot of men who've never got married, never had children, they didn't want it. They saw their dads, be very unhappy in, marriages and etc. And it's as though they've been living lives where they're trying to free their father. It's like they're going on a journey, on a quest, where they become the son who's like the knight on the quest to free the king or something, or save the king, or rescue. A lot of guys that I know dating younger women, doing the rescuing thing because it's easier than dating women your same age who are also dealing with the same Pluto stuff. Like, how do you be a woman in the modern world? But needing men, but then when you need them, then they don't want you. And you're dealing with, it's big gender shifts. So it's not just those of us who are Gen Xers or, Pluto in Libra. It's anybody that's alive right now is affected by Pluto. And we are rethinking and reshaping the patriarchy, the masculine, by killing him first. The king is dying, killing the king. He's being reborn, and it's going to be through some revolutionary, in a sense, new person, let's say. It's not going to be a person, but as Pluto moves into Aquarius, it's like a shift in consciousness where we're more open to gender fluidity or gender roles being whatever you want them to be, individuality being key. Again, it's like you can watch whatever you want on the internet. You don't have to watch commercials anymore. You don't have to follow the old rules. So, okay, we're going to talk next. We'll talk about our eclipses. The eclipses, let's first of all discuss a little bit about the sun and the moon. So as a very basic primer on eclipses, for those of you who are unfamiliar with them, they have to do with the sun and the moon and the earth. It's the relationship that the three planets have. And I know that the moon's not a planet, I know that the sun's not a planet, but that's what we call them in astrology. So these three bodies move through cycles. And of course, we have a full moon, and then a couple weeks later we have a new moon, and then a couple weeks later we have a full moon. This is just the cycle of the moon as it orbits the earth, and as the earth orbits the sun. So with, for example, a new moon, you have the sun and the moon together, okay? And you don't see the moon at nighttime because when the sun rises in the morning, the moon is with the sun. It's like husband moon or sun and wife moon holding hands through the sky, okay? And they're together at nighttime too on the other side of the world. You just can't see them. When you have a full moon, it's the opposite. It's where they're as far apart as possible, okay? And you've got the sun rising. As the sunrise is rising here, it's setting over here. Or the moon rather is setting over here, and vice versa. As the sun sets on a day that we're going to have the full moon, the moon rises right after. It's right then at the same time, which is pretty cool. So point being, let's talk about the symbolism though, the sort of archetypes that we have given to the sun and the moon that we use in Western astrology. The moon is the feminine. The moon is a rock, reflects the light, the sort of conscious rays, the intelligence, so to speak, from the sun, it shines it back through reflection. It is as though it's an empty, it is a rock. It's like it's an empty vessel. Whereas the sun is this creative force. The sun is giving off photons. It's giving off light. So the sun represents the masculine, not to be sexist, but you think about the body parts, first of all. The masculine as an archetype, sort of yang as an archetype. Anything that is moving away from, or it's positive, like a positive particle, something, or positive charge, I should say. Whereas the feminine is something that is a vessel. There's an emptiness there. There is a quality of it. They're being receptive. It receives. Okay, so sun is active, and the vessel, or the moon rather, is receptive. It's like the womb. It's like our body parts. Okay, man has a penis, woman has a vagina. All right. So thinking about these principles with the sun and the moon, psychologically, when we have a new moon, the moon is being completely, not shadowed by the sun, but like the opposite, where the sun's so bright you can't see the moon. It's like the moon is just so little and hiding and out of sight. And at nighttime, when it's night, there's no moon in the sky. She's missing. So there is this emptiness. There is this quality of, and it's interesting how the cycles all connect, but it's a very masculine time, and it's as though the sun is covering the moon, just as though the husband would cover the wife to, in union, so that he could give her his seed, right, into the vessel of her womb, and then she has the creation, which is their child. So the sun and the moon coming together, their relationship during the month, it's what creates our month. It's really quite beautiful. So what they're birthing is, and it's not just from new moon to full moon, but it's from new moon to full moon to new moon. But they're birthing our month together, all right? The moon really is the one doing the birthing, though. She's the one who's changing. She's the one, the sun stays the same, and she's the one who goes through this process of change. She's also the body closest to the earth. She's the most in touch with the human experience. Women's cycles run at the same, pretty much at the same pace. A lot of women have their period on the full moon. I know I do. It's really, really common to have your cycle line up with the cycles of the moon. So when you think about a new moon, the sun is the dominant force, the masculine, the father, this being in this place of rationality. So it's a good time to plan something. It's a good time to sort of look at the sign that it's in. Now, that's very important. But as a general rule, it's not that it's necessarily like a super mental time. It's not that so much. It's just, things. When the light, it's like you turn the light on in a room and you're like, oh, I'm in the kitchen. Or you turn the light on in a room, you're like, oh, I'm in a bedroom. Okay? It's that. It's the awareness of fill in the blank in your life. So depending on where that new moon kind of falls for you, it's going to speak to you in some certain way. Look at the moon in your birth chart too, by the way. If you're born on a full moon, like me, new moons that don't really affect me. New moons, I'm always like, I wouldn't even have known it was a new moon. Full moons, I was born on a full moon, totally affect me. I always feel them very strongly. So now a full moon is when, as though if you imagine that the moon is getting pregnant, so to speak, during a new moon, okay? There's information, that consciousness has been exchanged, and there's a creation now waiting. The potentiality has been set inside the womb. So then, 2 weeks later, we have a full moon. The sun and moon are as far apart as possible. This even makes me think of different cultures where the woman goes to have the baby, the child, with other women, and men are not allowed, in the process. And that's very cosmic. And so when the woman is having a baby, if you've had a child or watched someone have one, it is a very, very raw, primal experience. And there is nothing like it in the world. And as a woman, I had 3 of my 4 kids without any medical intervention, no pain medicine. And they were very empowering, life-changing experiences. You go through that experience and you can pretty much do anything. And so those of us who are comfortable in that space, that is primal. It is when a person has a baby, there's lots of noises that are made. There's lots of mess. There's blood. There's slimy stuff. There's all your body parts are exposed, right? That's kind of how full moon can feel. When I had my babies, I like to be by myself. I labored in the shower, in a bathtub, by myself, in the dark, and I would just breathe and just get into my ritual. That's how I like to do full moons, and you may be similar, okay? Now that we said that, usually every month we have a full moon and a new moon, depending on the year. Sometimes we'll have an extra, so it just depends. But eclipses are always, we talk about eclipses are always either a full moon or a new moon, okay? So when it's a full moon, that's a lunar eclipse, and when it's a new moon, it's a solar eclipse, okay? So always, eclipses are one of the two. But full moons and new moons are not always eclipses, okay? With eclipses, they have an added quality to them of intensity. You think about, so this is when we bring the Earth into the story. It's when all 3 of these planets are lining up. Because what we talk about when I'm going like this with my hands, like this is a full moon, the Earth would be in the middle, sun and moon are opposite each other, right? Earth in the middle. It's like their tug of war. If you were to flip this and look at it like this, when you look at a chart, that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about longitudes. The longitudes. Let me make this make more sense. I didn't say that very well. When I'm going like this, I'm showing you things from a perspective that's like a declination. Okay, so these planetary bodies can be at different heights as they orbit, right? They're maybe different heights. Okay, So when they line up with each other, that's when you have an eclipse, because everything lines up and they block each other. They block the light, the consciousness. And that has this quality of being like particularly, the symbolism is like particularly strong, and it's reverse in a way, okay? So when you have, for example, we'll have January 6th, our 1st, it's coming up on this weekend, we're gonna have a new moon. And so it's a partial solar eclipse. The moon is partially going to be, in a spot where she's blocking the light that it's getting here to Earth. Now, we had a full solar eclipse that we could see in the United States last year, right? And actually not last year, no, 2017. And so the moon was blocking for a moment, for a few minutes, was blocking the light of the sun. The feminine, the wife, is blocking the husband. She's coming in front, right? She's like taking center stage. It's kind of she's not in her proper place, so to speak. It's like things are kind of flippy-floppied. And I personally feel like this one is a Capricorn too. Capricorn and Cancer, these are the archetypes that have to do with sort of the mother and the father. I will say, I think of the sun as by the way, this kind of the divine father, the kingly father, but I also think of the sun in astrology as all of us, our inner child, the divine spark that we all carry. It's like our genetic, our divine DNA from the father's son as he comes together with Mother Moon. And then we are born on a certain day in the year, that's the father's year. And so we are imbued with our sun sign, which is a little piece of that 365-day year of the sun, if that makes sense, right? So, and then we have our moon too, which is the part of us that is our mother, okay? Hopefully that is helpful. But when we have a solar eclipse like this, it has to do with the Saturn archetype, which is like the earthly father, restrictions, the fact that in life you're gonna die one day, so you better, get to harvesting or however they say it, sow the seed when the sun is shining or whatever. And so this one is plan your work, work your plan. And I feel like there's a broody quality to this particular new moon. It's at 15 degrees of Capricorn, right in the middle of Capricorn. That particular point is going to be lined up too with Pluto. Pluto's kind of, at 20-ish or so, 21. And you've got planets here, you've got Saturn on the other side, and it just has this feeling of, okay, all right, I need to plan something and make it happen. And with Mars in Aries, which is sort of squaring Mercury, there will be, it's a good chance for some agitated, for some people, for fights. I think I like this idea of it being about going inward though, and planning your own work, your own plan. I just feel with this moon, kind of in Capricorn, this emotional sense of, oh, I need to be taking my life more seriously, and maybe even a little bit the depressing or the downside that we can sometimes feel with Capricorn when we're recognizing our failures. But the high side, where it's like, okay, well, now at least I know what I did wrong, so I can do it better next time. Okay. Moving on next to our next eclipse, and by the way, I forgot to mention this. I use a technique that I haven't shared yet with the public, but I will be doing that this year at some point. And with this technique, I come up with particular points. I'm able to come up with what I call a deep chart. So in the deep chart, you can experiment with this for yourself. 16 degrees of Scorpio is the point in the deep chart that is the same degree as this new moon. So you can see where that lands. Look at the house that it lands in for you. Look at the house that the new moon lands in for you. That's an area where you may be feeling a certain sense of dissatisfaction, sense I need to work harder in this area. I may be feeling tired. I may be feeling run down here. I may be feeling okay, enough is enough. Let's get this sorted and organized and put into, might even have to your house, your home. I know I feel after the holidays I want to get my house totally kind of back in order and my work stuff all really organized. So you may be feeling that. Okay. We then move on to our January 21st total lunar eclipse. So we go from a new moon, solar eclipse, to a lunar eclipse, which is a full moon, okay? Full moon, lunar eclipse. I'm calling this one Variations on a Musical Theme. This eclipse will be at 0 degrees of Leo, right? So just barely scooched into Leo. For the most part, all of our eclipses will be kind of the Cancer and Capricorn variety. Leo is the sign. Remember, this is the divine child from when we talk about the father being the son. It's like this has to do with you as an individual. You were born on a certain day, on a certain year, at a certain place, and you have a certain life that's only yours and no one else's. I think that this Leo archetype, because it's the moon in Leo, it is the feminine energy that's going to be feeling a desire to be creative and going to be feeling like a need to be seen, to be recognized, to be validated. It's a very creative from an artistic perspective as well. That's why I sort of thought variations on a musical theme. So to me, I feel like whatever you're kind of planning at the beginning of the month, you may really feel a certain sense of, what's the word? I feel kind of like excitement during this particular lunar eclipse. Now, about any creative projects you have that you're working on. They could even be romantically creative, or like, oh, we're trying to have a baby, or that kind of thing, okay? In the deep chart, the exact degree is Gemini 2. So if you've got anything at Gemini 2, or where Gemini 2 falls in your chart, look at that. It's going to show you the underbelly. What is motivating this feeling of needing to do something with your life that's special, needing to feel romantically validated, for your partner to think that you're amazing, or, oh my gosh, I'm so in love, let's have a baby, or let's start this project together. It just has this childlike enthusiasm to it. With the Gemini 2 underneath it, the story is important. And this has to do too with like Gemini is being opposed by Sagittarius, and so the story is definitely very dreamy. It's receiving my square from Neptune too. What is this dream we have together? And the big caveat here is if you decide to do anything with another person where you have an agreement or an arrangement or a business together, or I don't know, relationship, be careful, because the stories this year is a good, very, 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 very good chance, like 100% chance in my mind, that you're going to have two totally different stories that you're going to find out down the road, and different reasons for kind of entering into any sort of arrangement, which is okay. We're all different, right? Put two people together, it's always going to be different. But there's an element here to the story being like stuff being hidden, I suppose. Okay, intentions being people showing something on the surface that's different from what's happening inside. There being duplicity, basically. And also the symbol for this one, the sort of inside degree, was a dense thicket of brambles surrounding a magic castle. And I love that idea of the surface, you've got these weeds, these thorny weeds, but inside is this beautiful magical castle. So I do feel like if you've got personally dreams that you've wanted to pursue this year, the end of January might be a time where you start feeling like this might really work. Like, I'm excited about this. Now, moving into Cancer season, so the beginning of, our eclipses are during sort of the Capricorn time of year. We then move into the Cancer time of year, and we start it with a total solar eclipse, so a new moon, masculine, but remember, being overshadowed by a moon in Cancer, and the moon rules Cancer. So this is a really big union of these two planets, and in a way where the feminine is strong. I titled this An Old King and His Foreign Bride, because it's like the coming together of these two for the betterment of both kingdoms. But there's an element here of these two people being very different from one another, these two entities, and the feminine being the stronger, more dominant power, actually, which could end up leading to the downfall, so to speak, of the king. So think of this as a metaphor. This to me is new beginnings in the house where this particular eclipse transits, with bear in mind with this idea, the symbolism that something is there that something's there that you maybe need to allow to be overshadowed, so to speak, by a more emotional perspective. And I know that probably sounds very, follow your intuition, follow your heart, listen to it's like he can't speak the language of his bride, so the bride's the moon, right? It's as though the king needs to get quiet and needs to learn the language of his new bride. speaks, okay? And the new bride is your heart. So this is like your consciousness being a little unsure. And July is a shitstorm of a month anyway. We have lots of stuff happening in July. It's like a mess. So getting quiet, listening to your heart is going to be really important. And the symbol for this one is people holding hands around a table. One candle is burning in the middle of the table. And we have the deep chart degree at Scorpio 17. So it's almost exact same degree as it is for the very first eclipse, which is this weekend. So my thought is, I think that this total solar eclipse in July, especially because those of us in the US, I think it's going to be like on the other side of the world or whatever, right? Like it's not going to be, we won't be able to see it. Or it might be over the ocean, I can't remember. But anyway, it feels like it's going to be a time where we may have a lot of emotions, a lot of irrationality, sort of a sense of wanting to sacrifice for something that we believe in, needing to make some decisions that are going to have to just be sort of like we're feeling around in the dark a little bit for, am I doing the right thing? And with the Scorpio underneath, also, if there have been things that were hidden that now, January, we've come together in an agreement, arrangement of some kind, there's hidden stuff happening, it will all come out in July. It's all going to up the surface. So that's my opinion. When we move to July 16th, we have a full moon. It's a partial lunar eclipse. And this one is in the sign of Cancer. It's a 24 of Cancer. Oh, and I said, I misspoke. I'm sorry. I just misspoke. It's Capricorn, not Cancer. It's Capricorn 24. So this is the moon now being, the moon is in a sign that's opposite. The moon, the feminine energy this year feels like she's trying to be very mature. She's trying, I don't know, just has this weird feel to me, or even just men this year maybe feeling soft or feeling unsure of themselves, the masculine kind of being taught how to do that which is feminine. I think this is going to affect, in particular, all the cardinal signs more than anything else, anyone else. Those of us who are cardinal, so Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, we will all be feeling the gender stuff, gender roles, men who are usually really strong and brave and whatever, being okay with being softer and more vulnerable, women who are usually more vulnerable, stepping into their independence, that kind of thing. I think we're going to see this year. So be careful about, I called this one Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Be careful about there's lots of endings and completions in that area where the eclipse transits. So in particular, sort of feels like maybe the death of something that's ego-based. If you have an identity about your belief about your identity that has to do with being really creative, let's say, or being really good at something in particular, I don't know, whatever it is, something that you really identify with, having initially having that new moon there, and then having the full moon in the opposite house, basically, Cancer, Capricorn, just those areas of yourself. Where do you worry about what other people think about you? Where do you try to be something that's different than who you really are? This is how you're going to be gaining clarity this year. Sagittarius demands truth and wants the real experience. That's why he boldly goes forward, though, with a naivete, which is like, it's almost like when someone's drunk and they have courage. That's Sagittarius, basically. And so he boldly goes forward and gets burnt or not. The Cancer Capricorn stuff happening this year is going to be about you going inside of yourself and going, okay, I tried this thing. It's making me feel really awesome. It's helping me lose this old part of myself that wasn't really who I really am, helping me grow and evolve. Or it's making me, I thought it would make me feel really awesome and it's not. And it's making me feel shitty and like I need to recalibrate things. That's kind of what will happen in July, okay? Moving into the final eclipse, and also the deep chart point is 0 degrees of Sagittarius. If you have anything at 0 of Sag or at any of the mutable signs there, that is going to be the underlying. So it's the truth. It's saying, okay, journey. I want to go on this journey. I've been on a little bit of a journey. We're halfway through the year. Where are we at now? Is this? I almost feel like with the Gemini in January, the Gemini deep chart is at Gemini 2. And then it being Sagittarius 0, Sagittarius in the summer, I feel like we're going to try something in January, have all these ideas and try them, jump into them and blah. And then in July, there might be a bit of a, maybe I should actually do it this way. this might be better, this might be smarter. Or it could also be, this has been going really well, I'm gonna like do it even more. I don't know, July's a wild card, so I'm not really sure. December, then finally, we have December 25th, next Christmas, a partial solar eclipse. And I'm calling this one, That'll Do, Pig, That'll Do. Looking back on the year, it's a new moon. There's this, it's Capricorn, and it ends the year at the same archetype that we started with, right? Capricorn Sun, Capricorn Moon, and feeling like emotionally, all right, I feel good. This year I got this far on my journey. I've clarified some of my truths to myself about who it is I am, what my life is, where I'm going with my life. Do I believe in God? Do I not? What are my existential leanings, philosophical leanings, political leanings, etc.? Is my life of meaning? Do I have purpose? Is my life exciting? Is it full and abundant or not? And this to me feels like the end of this year, the symbol is Chiron ferries the dead across the river Styx. So I do feel like it's a good letting that year go, moving forward into the next chapter for 2020. So finally, we have Mercury retrogrades this year. So we've got 3 of them. It's pretty typical. Now, Mercury retrogrades are a time when we are retooling our personal perspectives on life. Okay, Mercury is quick. It is after the moon. It's the second quickest body planet that we use. So you think about the moon tying into your emotional, very personal, completely subjective inner world that no one else can be a part of. Mercury then, so this is how you emotionally, the moon, emotionally perceive the world around you. Mercury, on the other hand, has to do with language. Once you've learned to talk and you can communicate with another person and you can learn from someone, you can hear words, you can speak words, you can not only use language, but you can understand abstract concepts from your perspective, personal, subjective use of your mind and understanding of the world around you, okay? It's not Sagittarius. That's where we believe in something and we're moving towards it to learn so that we can be the teacher. Gemini is more like you're the student and you're learning from life and taking in different various experiences, okay? And then giving those experiences labels, naming them, defining them. So when Mercury, which is our planet of definition, it's our planet of language, and it's how it has to do with communication as humans, right? Through the process of exchanging weird sounds with our mouths or weird symbols that are arbitrary on a piece of paper or on a computer. Ties into the human experience completely. We are the only species that I know of that use like language, abstract sound, like sounds to symbolize abstract meaning. So Mercury, when it stations retrograde, affects us as humans in a way that is directly connected to our understanding of the world around us. And this year, Mercury is retrograde in water signs. So with that, you have the additional lovely sort of attribute of the irrational realm, the emotional realm, the intuitive realm. That is the realm that we all belong to, but that does not initially, it's not connected to language at all. Okay? When you feel something, you have a gut feeling about something, when you have an emotion, a real true, just a feeling, that's not connected to language. It doesn't have to be. Babies can feel things and they don't know how to talk yet. Okay? So it is there's a quality with the intuition, a knowingness that goes deeper. It's deep, deep, deep. Not only in the animal physical intuition of our bodies, but we also have intuition that ties into the way that we interact with others, our spirits and our souls. I believe in past and reincarnations, future incarnations, and all at the same time, and what have you. There's knowingness that we are tapped into divinely, I think. We're all part of this incredible, connected, like matrix, really, of it's like of space-time. And our consciousness is a real thing. Consciousness, I believe that your mind has an ability to see the world, to observe the world in a particular way that can change the world you're observing. It's like particle physics, right? Double slit experiment. So I would say that with Mercury retrograde, we tend to not, as a whole, be using our communication function as well as normal. For example, I experienced just barely, and I always kind of like laugh off Mercury retrograde. I'm like, whatever, it happens, 3 times a year usually, and whatever. I had this last year when it's in Sagittarius, and with the deep chart, in the deep chart, it was making an exact hit in all of the charts that I use to my major personal planets that would have to do with communications or with property. I was hacked, I had money stolen, I had all kinds of horrible things happen, and it bought new machines and then broke my brand new laptop, the screen within like a few weeks of buying it, like thing after thing after thing that were very frustrating that had to do with communication. But it gave me time to sit and like actually have to write something out because I didn't have a freaking computer that I could use, right? Like I had to slow down and sort of think through things from a different perspective. That is Mercury's job, perspective. It's like Gemini, the twins, siblings, have a different perspective on the same set of parents. You're in a classroom. Every student in the classroom has a different perspective on the same damn teacher, okay? Everyone sees things from their own little matrix. You are the central point, connected to everything around you. You move through this world like a little orb warping space-time, right? Affecting everything and everyone that you come into contact with. So that central point, your point of conscious kind of in your body, conscious awareness and understanding your story, that's your Mercury. Mercury retrograde in Pisces. This is very much tied into, it's 29 degrees of Pisces, the end of Pisces. That's like the fat lady sings. That is like Pisces to the extreme. Any sign at 29 degrees, it's right before it transitions into a new sign. It's always darkest before the dawn, okay? It is amplified. And if you've got anything in your birth chart at 29 degrees, that sign, the shadow side of that archetype, of that planet, of the sign, the house, are things in this life you've come here to really work on and to sort of fix, okay? Pisces has to do with, Mercury and Pisces clients, for example, they're always my clients that almost always, if I have a communication issue with someone, like they forgot to fill something out, or we can't get a hold of each other, or there's just these weird, like they message me on the wrong thing, or I reach out to them on the wrong thing, there's like a disconnect, it's usually they have Mercury and Pisces. Their minds are better at working in the realm of imagination and creativity and sort of the dream space. So also you see people who love like video games, virtual reality, this idea of what's possible, but that's not necessarily what's real. You see people who have really good intuition as well. So I'm calling this lost in the dream of 10,000 things. It feels to me like we're going to experience a lot of kind of information being incomplete, being missing, and it's kind of necessary because it's going to square our Jupiter. The part of us that's going to feel like, oh yes, this is a great idea. I should definitely go do this, or I have this all figured out. And Neptune is kind of like, Pisces, not Neptune, Pisces in Mercury in Pisces conjunct, relatively conjunct Neptune in Pisces is like, oh yeah, this is your dream. You totally have this figured out. It's kind of like egging Jupiter on to a certain extent. They're both planets that have to do with information. They're mutable. What does our soul need to know in order to grow and to change and to not remain static and the same? They just do it in different ways. Neptune and Pisces they dissolve things. They like take them away. They make things blurry. They remove boundaries so that everything is just one gelatinous mass, which can be really challenging with a planet like Mercury, which is supposed to be defining and delineating and making things make like sense, right? So just be aware that March 6th through March 29th, I'm just writing March off. I'm like, I'm going to take a lot of baths in March, do a lot of just reading and enjoying my creativity, listening to music and stuff. It's just going to be a time where I expect there to be a lot of misunderstandings or your brain feeling mushy. People even like losing their voice, like literally that kind of thing can happen. Just an absence of the voice. You record something, it disappears. You record something and there's no sound on it. Just stuff like that. Okay. When we move into the April 17th, Mercury will be out of his shadow. So anything that happens between March 6th to April 17th, will have kind of for the next year or so. If you start something new, it will have a quality that's a bit in dreamland, or it's kind of intoxicated. It's kind of like, when you've I don't know, just, yeah, it feels like someone who's a little bit high. Not all the way in reality, put it that way. We move to July. July 8th through August 1st is our next Mercury retrograde. I'm calling this one Biting One's Tongue. This is happening at the same time as July's eclipses, right? So it's like this pretty intense, personally irrational maybe time where we're doing some clarification and wait, I thought you were on the same page as me, but maybe you're not. Maybe Mercury retrograde, it's in Leo 4, scoots all the way back into Cancer. This is that end of Cancer space that we're seeing with our eclipses, the personal vision, your childhood story that you are living with as an adult. Many of us live with our trauma from our childhood unless we've done work on it. And that will all be the stuff that you're dealing with this year, and especially in July. I feel like Mercury in Leo has to do with, I thought you knew me better than that. I thought you knew who I was. This makes me this makes me sad that you don't know who it is that I really am. And then the other person being like, oh crap, I hurt your feelings or what have you, and wanting to say something or feeling dissatisfied or feeling a sense of like, I normally I would say something, but this time I'm just not going to, and kind of being suppressed, pushed down, biting their tongue until it bleeds. Like, I really do think that's going to be a bit of the themes this summer. And the planetary points, you've got anything between 0 to 4 degrees of mainly cardinal signs, but also really anything, as well as anything from 23 to 29. Those are the areas that are going to be affected by sort of you thinking, should I say something or should I not say anything? I can't help but say something. Sort of just you reworking and rethinking communication. So be careful about saying anything that you can't take back too. Okay. Now November, the last Mercury retrograde's in November. It's on November 1st through November 21st. It starts on the Day of the Dead, right after Halloween, and it's in Scorpio. 27 Scorpio through, scoots back to 11, the last half of Scorpio. This is kind of the Piscean, I'm sorry, I'm saying this wrong. It's the Cancer decan of Scorpio. So we've got this, again, subjective, personal, irrational perspective. You made me feel this way, or I need this to feel safe, or I kind of feel like this is when things are going to come to the surface. If there were lies earlier in the year, if we bought into a dream and we oversold ourselves or overpromised to someone, or if there was like we overpromised and then we felt like we couldn't get out of something, but then there was bad behavior that happened. It's like this is whenever it comes up to the surface. It's when everything comes out, and so kind of to me feels a bit. I call that facing the truth can be painful. Emotionally. Wow, how did I miss that? What was I not paying attention to? Where could I have been? It's ruled by Pluto, so where could I have been more responsible? Where am I having to sort of do the time? Where am I having to put in work, or sort of like for past opportunities where you've gotten away with things? Feels kind of like that will be when you're having to sort of face the music, I guess. So look at where it falls in your chart. Just depends. Okay, we are going to move on to the individual signs now. So, hey there, Aries. Let's talk a little bit about 2019 for you. Now, first we're gonna kind of go through the planets, the outer planets that I mentioned in the earlier part of the video. We pretty much just focus on those. I will say, because you are a cardinal sign with the eclipses that we have during the Cancer Capricorn sort of cycle, you're going to really need to pay attention to this year, decisions that you make. You might not see fully kind of the outcome for decisions that happen in January until July, as well as from July into December. But your life as your home and your family life are affected. Those will kind of come to the surface for you this year. Okay, now we're going to start first of all. Let's take a look at Jupiter. Jupiter is in Sagittarius this year, and this is wonderful for you guys because Sagittarius is fire, and you're fire, meaning these are archetypes, these are symbols that have to do with making things move, using one's personal energy and excitement, or one's personal ambition, their drive to affect change in the world around us. Okay, Aries is an archetype that just quite simply has to do with, I am here, I exist, I am the essentialized man, right? I'm a human. And so Aries, when you have Sagittarius forming a trine to it, is bringing this, Sag and Jupiter have to do with belief, believing in yourself as a man. It's very sort of fundamentally encouraging. And with a sun being in Aries, it can also be, the shadow side would be the pitfalls of like ego inflation and thinking of things from a perspective of almost, I don't think that's how a lot of Aries are going to experience this. I think what's going to happen is you guys are going to feel really excited about this year, very positive, and have belief in things that maybe you've not let yourself believe in before. And it just, Jupiter's going to be teaching you some lessons though about, you might think things are going to go a certain way, but they may not quite go the way that you're hoping. So it just, to me, it still feels like there's the maturing influence of Pluto and of Saturn on you guys this year, and sort of learning more about, oh, there were times in the past where I kept repeating this same thing over and over again, and it was really selfish of me. And now I'm learning, I can see the error of my ways, you know. And I feel like Aries this year are going to want to simplify, and that has to do with Uranus as well. But when we talk about Sag, it's like, I want to live the good life. I want to live the life that's true for me, that is about adventure and exploring and trying things I've never tried before, and believing in possibility, and also being authentic and putting myself out there, taking risks, all of that, which is great. But, so this is the other side. Neptune is currently in Pisces and has been there since 2011. So Jupiter spends about a year in a sign, okay? As Jupiter moved into, it was in Scorpio, and that was like the Me Too movement. That was more serious, like hidden truths coming up to the surface and people processing that stuff for about a year. Now it's this lighter feeling of Sag. Sag is like, oh, possibility. Yes, I made it through that thing. I almost died. Maybe I did die and I was reborn. But now I'm alive again. I'm here. So Sag has this, in fact, and Sag also has this quality of feeling like, I learned and I know and I have the answers. There can be this, I know everything, to Sagittarius. That is Sag's weakness. Sag feeling like they already have it all figured out, but at the same time, Sagittarius and Jupiter, when I say that, they're interchangeable. It's like, I already have it all figured out. I don't need to learn anything else, in a sense. Let me teach you and tell you what you need to know, okay? And the problem with that is, when you take on that role, you then, to become wise, you have to be naive first. And when you're naive, you have growth experiences where you learn things by getting hurt, basically. So you become humbled. And point being, at the end of the day, this is the search for the Holy Grail for you guys. You're going to feel like you're on some mythic quest for some truth, something that's bigger than yourself, something that feels like it's in alignment with your beliefs, and it also probably has something to do with the way you see yourself. There's a bit of ego stuff here. So feeling like this particular opportunity in my life has aligned itself, and I feel really buoyed up by it. My ego I feel like I'm an important person, or I feel like my life is good, or other people will see me and they'll think like, oh wow, you got it figured out, that kind of thing, you know. So be careful of ego inflation, buying into a myth, because that's what this year is going to be about for you, is the personal myth, which there's nothing wrong with a personal myth, but when it involves other people, which it most likely will with other things in this chart, there can be people that are hurt. So be sure that you're clear with yourself about your intentions, and that you're clear in your communication with other people, and be sure that you're listening to them. There's a good chance that you guys are the ones this year that get the wool pulled over your eyes, like big time. So be careful. And also the trap of possibly wanting to rescue other people or fix other people, be the mentor, the educator to others, when really you're going to end up being the one who's learning. You're going to be the student. So yes, there's that this year for you. Moving on to Saturn. So Saturn, on the other hand, while Jupiter expands, teaches us through giving us abundance and blessings and lots of something, Saturn is kind of like, he teaches by restricting, by putting limits on us. And I'm calling this one, do I measure up? You've had Saturn in your 10th, and so career can be an area where we're striving, we're working hard at creating a career or a reputation that has an element of like people thinking that we are good at what we do, or that we are worthy, what I've noticed with the Aries that I know, because I have lots of them in my life this year, or in general, but this past year, it has been them feeling like the path that they were on, the sort of plan they had for themselves for their life, was feeling unsatisfying, was feeling wrong, was feeling like, this is not working. So let's rethink this. And at the same time, I think that the Saturn in the 10th gave a feeling of dissatisfaction with the reputation, feeling isolated, feeling in some ways sort of like, even if you were someone who's a really busy Aries, feeling not like you weren't being your authentic self. Okay, so I think that now that Saturn is at 11 to 21 degrees, joining up with Pluto, which, this is both are squaring your sun, you should be experiencing more of a clarity about what are you afraid of dominating you? What is it that you're afraid of if you fail at something? Does it matter if you fail? Like, what is there to learn from that? And Saturn's also saying life is short. So if you've been noticing and feeling your age lately, Saturn is saying, like, sober up, pay attention, work hard at your goals, and get clear about your goals, because this is going to be over shortly. That's what Saturn does, kind of a Debbie Downer. But then the good thing is, then of course you know what you need to do to change. Now with Uranus, which is our big kind of, the big news this year, Uranus moves into Taurus. So for you guys, this will be, I forgot to mention this, I'm sorry. What I'm doing is I'm looking at your natural houses, and because you're Aries, whatever sign the transiting planet is in, it'll be in that natural house. Jupiter in Sagittarius is going to be in the 9th house for every Aries in their natural chart, because that's the 9th house that's Sagittarius's house. Okay, so it makes it easy. Taurus, Uranus in Taurus. Uranus is moving into all Arians' 2nd house. This to me feels like the lightening of the load when it comes to creating some kind of security for yourself through possessions, or through feeling like you got a job and you have benefits and you get paid on time and you can just pay your bills, or you've got a certain amount of money in the bank, or whatever it might be for you that you've put your security in. Uranus into this second kind of says, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if I really need that car. I don't know if I really need to have this house. I don't know if I might just want to sell it all and like travel, or I might want to focus my attention more on things that have meaning to me. Feels as well like a time where your money, your finances, I can imagine a lot of Aries being early adopters with cryptocurrency, because it's Aries anyway, but like ways of investing your money that are off the beaten path, I suppose. And I think as well, you guys, I call this the king must die for his kingdom to survive. That's what I'm calling for Aries in general. The king must die for his kingdom to survive. And by that I mean the ego. The king being the sort of the ego, the father, that sense of I have control over my life. I am in possession of myself. I am tough. I can do whatever it is that I put my mind to. All that stuff that we tell ourselves. That part of the self is going to be dying. It has been dying as Pluto's been squaring it for a while. It's really going to be dying as we wrap up this last little bit in Pluto in Capricorn over the course of this next few years till 2025-ish or so, 2027. So right now you guys are going to be focused on what have I learned so far, and you're going to have at this point, with Uranus having been in Aries and you having been a little bit wild and crazy since 2008 basically, or I'm sorry, since 2011, or no, 2008. Am I saying that right? I'm thinking of Pluto. Uranus is 2011, I believe. Maybe even a little bit later. My brain sometimes gets a little mixed up. 2011, wild and crazy times. It was right before then, because that was when I got divorced. But point being, doing things that put your life, completely flipped your life around, experiences that you've never experienced before, breaking a lot of rules, bending way away from what society says is okay, that kind of thing. After that, there's a bit of, that's chaotic, right? But you learned something from it because you established your own sense of independence in certain areas, and you tried things maybe that you never tried before, that you always maybe wanted to try, and you rebelled and tried them, and then you learned from that. What did you learn? Probably you learned like, okay, yeah, that was I'm not really sure I want to go back there. Like, that was a little crazy. Things about that I liked and things about it I really didn't like. I'm going to bring into my life the information I can control, and I'm going to simplify and get away from maybe toxic relationships with crazy people, or situations where I feel like I am a slave to something that I feel like I need to rebel against it. Or if you, anything with finances, if you felt driven by ambitions to make money, you may feel like that's just not as important now. So also maybe we're learning how to let go of control. Letting go of control over other people, situations, life. People with strong, Aries a lot of times want to be in control of their world in a very pure, just natural, most of us, I think can admit that we want to be in control of our world to feel safe. That's going to be something that's not necessarily in your hands, and a lot of maybe unexpected events, circumstances that have to do with your money. Maybe you have less money. Maybe you have all of a sudden a lot of money. It's like, who knows? Uranus is going to give you whatever it is you need. Look at the house, or rather look at the sign in your second house. That is a thing that's going to be totally liberated, totally upended, completely sort of reworked and revolutionized and freed, and freed from being stuck and stagnant. Okay. Finally, we've got, not finally, I guess we didn't really do Neptune. Neptune is in Pisces, 14 to 18 degrees of Pisces this year. So in your 12th house, that is the house of self-undoing. You guys have been experiencing, all of us have a dream or a fantasy about what life should be, right? Like what relationships should be, what a job should be, etc. Aries in particular have had this theme since 2011, kind of this theme of projecting their dream onto others or onto the world around them, and now are going to be sort of waking up, especially by about 2025, to the fact that it's their dream. It wasn't necessarily someone else's dream. It was their projection. It was their work that needed to be done, but they were doing it sort of through their interactions with another person. So it's kind of fantasy versus reality. Getting into things with relationships or what have you, situations, scenarios with others, and being disillusioned. Thinking it's one thing, or having a fantasy about it, or projecting, thinking someone is something, good or bad, and then getting to know them and then being something totally different, and just feeling a little bit like your world is not what you thought it was. And it's sort of, to a certain extent, kind of falling apart. It has been, because it's here to help you. Once Neptune moves into the first, that will be a time of you rethinking, and being a part of all of us, rethinking how we do sort of assertion or anger, or how we do independence, or anyway, that's down the road. Finally, the Pluto in Capricorn that you've been working with since 2008 in Capricorn, the sign that has to do with the father. This is the death of the father story and the rebirth of the capital F father. Reworking your relationship to the rules. When you grew up, if you grew up in a, say, a conservative family, let's say your dad was really strict and you grew up with fear that you had to be some certain way or else you'd be in trouble, or you'd be rejected, or you would fail. That's the negative, that's the bad father. The good father is the true divine father, which is the thing that, when you look at a crystal in a microscope, it's the organization and the structure, the beauty of how the particles all connect to one another. It's the beauty of mathematics. It's the beauty of that which gives order, and it's the planets and the consistency of their motions. That's beautiful. So that's the side of Capricorn that you're going to walk away with. The areas in your life where you have rejected responsibility, or have rejected where you haven't shown up in the way you were maybe told that you're supposed to show up, and at the time you may have felt justified. At the end of this movement, you will have really learned the rules that you're willing to stand up for, and the things in your life where you're going to give yourself restrictions and discipline, and you've also learned what to throw out. So initially it's like you threw the baby out with the bathwater. Whoops. You're like, oh wait, I need that baby back. Come back here, baby. The baby's like grown up at this point. But anyway, you get the baby and you're like, okay, let's fix this. You're actually important. There's reasons we have rules. There's reasons we have structures. Reasons for commitments. There's reasons for being honest with other people. Yada yada. So the father will be reborn. Awareness and consciousness, and living a life in a way that's planned and organized, and not just like blindly going from urge to urge, being led around by your desire nature rather than by the parts of you that are using both your desire nature and your higher self, right? So it's also the rebirth of the patriarchy and of the masculine. So for men, the emasculation of the masculine will have, I think, swung back into the middle. Same for females, to be okay, to be vulnerable, to be in your feminine, to be emotional, to feel things, to be wherever you want to be on the spectrum. It'll be very healing. So, all right, hope this is helpful. If you're interested in going deeper, that would be a reading. So we usually do a birth chart reading and then a forecast. You can just order a forecast. I prefer doing a birth chart reading first. It tends to be more, it tells a much more complete story. But if we do a forecast for you, we will then look at all of the houses and the signs relative to the moment you were born. So they're going to be slightly different and calibrated differently, usually, unless you're an Aries rising, from your just the Aries sun sort of forecasting chart, so natural chart. Okay, hope this was helpful and take care. All right, bye-bye.